Hello and welcome to FinextraTV. I'm Hannah Wallace, and kindly joining me now is Jerry Haywood, CEO of Boostai, and we're talking about unlocking the value of generative AI and leveraging large language models in financial services. Jerry, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Really good to have you on. This is a fascinating topic and really relevant today. And whilst our audience might be very familiar with the concept of artificial intelligence, it might not be as familiar with generative AI. So could you explain to us exactly what it is and also how it differs to AI? Let's start there.
Sure. So generative AI has been around actually for a number of years. It's just been a less familiar term, predominantly because it hasn't been that out there in the main for most individuals and organizations. And around November time, a company called OpenAI launched something called ChatGPT, which kind of brought generative AI into the mainstream. And it's really the ability to create content, be that text content, imagery content, code, from significantly large data sets. So a subset of that is a large language model. And large language models is really what ChatGPT is built from. And it has significant data sets from the internet that's publicly available, and it uses those data sets to generate content based on questions that you might interrogate it. And you can now do the same with imagery. So based on an image database or significant image databases, it can blend and create new imagery. The Barack Obama, Angela Merkel retirement pictures were great examples of really someone playing with those images and creating unique content. So I think it's a really, really exciting time for AI in general, because generative AI really does bring it to the forefront of society and actually makes everyone more familiar with what AI is, and helps organizations, or hopefully helps organizations, think about how they could use it more effectively in their organizations.
No, it's fascinating. Thanks for setting the scene for us there and giving us the backstory. And now coming to two quite big questions rolled into one. How can we harness then the power of generative AI in the banking and financial space? And also, how can enterprises ensure that they're using the technology responsibly? So about that.
Yeah, great question. I think within financial services, there's a significant number of use cases. It's really imagination, I think, that's limiting our creativity there. What we're seeing the most in financial services is a fewfold. A good example in SMB marketing would be, financial services would be kind of the summation of the non-financial data in a business plan. So how do we use a large language model and generative AI to help summarize business plans that might help organizations in financial services providers make better decisions based on that data and make quicker decisions using it. We're seeing it quite significantly in wealth management, where they're using internal virtual agents to support wealth managers in having access to information, because quite often within financial services, there's lots of significant back-end information repositories that they would need to go and access to try and make sure they're making decisions in the right way. So we're seeing them use virtual agents to support access to that information, almost like a mini super agent for internal employees. And then the most significant for Boost in the way that we're helping organizations is around virtual or intelligent virtual agents for consumers. So whereas some of that was limited potentially by the number of intents that it could understand, when you combine a platform like Boost with a large language model as well, you have extremely broad scope of understanding that you're able to understand 99% plus of the intents or something that a consumer might be asking a retail bank, and being able to respond effectively to that. So there's some really interesting use cases.
All right, some good advice weaved in there as well. Now tell me, how is Boost specifically helping enterprises leverage generative AI and large language models to improve operations and also customer experience? What about that?
So I think the good thing for an organization like Boost is everyone wants to talk about how we can harness this capability. And I think we're seeing the interest pick up fairly significantly, especially when it comes to virtual agents. And I think we're seeing the ability to provide significant value in two areas. The first area is in that initial creation setup, whereas a conversational AI project or a virtual agent project for many organizations was kind of a bit of a hurdle under the umbrella of digital transformation. It's like, how do we minimize that hurdle and actually really just allow organizations to get the value quickly? And I think using Boost with a large language model, you're able to, within hours, create a virtual agent that is quite often more effective than the one that they've spent years building. So I think that is truly transformational in being able to take away the hurdle that financial institutions have historically had in embarking on a project like this. So speed to value, speed to execution in being able to create a supporting virtual agent, I think is primary number one. Number two is, how do we, once that's been created, how do you really help the organization and help the agents be more efficient in them handling those customer queries? So that could be rewriting responses more creatively. It could be doing real-time translation between different parties talking different languages. It could be the summation of a conversation when you're handing from a virtual agent to a human agent. So we're seeing broadly in two areas. One is the initial setup, and then one is how do we help those agents have those conversations more effectively and more efficiently in servicing those customers.
All right, that's really interesting. Some good examples there. Now, could you share some specific use cases where enterprises are using generative AI and large language models to innovate in the financial services industry?
Yeah, sure. So we are actively engaged, especially in the UK market, where financial services is very strong. We're actively engaged with a number of top-tier retail banks today, where many of them, and I think if we look at the top 10 top retail banks, I think 7 of those top 10 have been on the journey around conversational AI for quite a long time. And the 2 examples that we're actively engaged with today, they've spent between 2.5 and 3 years of building out their virtual agents. The benchmarking we've done based on one that we've created within hours actually has a high level of understanding than the ones that they've spent years creating. By utilizing the Boost platform and combining that with large language models. So creating kind of a hybrid NLU, we're able to achieve the same results that they've spent years achieving today, which really allows them to focus on the more complex transactional use cases. So whereas today it might have been more of an FAQ bot answering the generic questions that many consumers come in and ask, how do we actually allow full automation of some of those queries? So could I increase my overdraft? Could I speak to someone regarding XYZ? Why is this transaction happened on my account? And being able to service those queries fully without a human ever really being involved. So I think it's exciting times for financial services, especially because those potentially more mundane things can now be handled extremely quickly within hours. And it allows them to focus on the more value add, value for the consumer and value for financial services organizations more rapidly.
Yeah, well, thank you for those use cases. They really help highlight how far we've really come, haven't we? So thank you very much for that.
Thank
really
you.
exciting to hear what Boostai is doing in the space and looking forward to hearing more from you in the future. But Jerry, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.